Welcome to episode 131 of the Charm City Birdwatch podcast. And we've got a win to talk about, so get excited. It's been way too long since we've talked about a Ravens win here on the podcast, but fortunately enough, they handled their business against the Cowboys last night, and we should have a pretty happy episode overall for once. But if we're going to start somewhere, and we're going to get into all of it, don't worry, the good, the bad, some of the ugly, and then we'll talk about the Ravens moving forward. They got another primetime game next week against the Browns. But to open up, we got to start with one of the bad things, and it happened before the game even started, and that was Dez Bryant, who was primed to, play in this game. Obviously, he's been involved in some games prior to this. It's not like this is his first game or anything, but playing the Cowboys, primetime game, national television, he's looking to have presumably a big impact, especially when you consider that Mark Andrews is still out, Willie Snead is still out. All things were set up for Dez to have, or get his, ample amount of targets and have an impact on this game. So it's definitely disappointing when the news comes down just really less than an hour before kickoff that he's scratched from the game. And, it's not just, he tweaked something while running around. He tested positive for the coronavirus. Now, that's a whole nother, thing, a whole nother beast that comes with all its other burdens. But just for starters, I got to say it's disappointing for Dez just because of the situation. He was lined up to play, and because of the other guys being out, maybe have a bigger impact on the game. This clearly meant a lot to him. You see his reaction on social media afterwards, immediately afterwards, and then throughout the game. Very tough on him. But it's just, when you look beyond that, this Ravens team just went through the worst coronavirus outbreak in professional sports that we've seen this year. All of professional sports, not just the NFL. And they're almost out of the woods. They still had guys that weren't eligible to play this week against Dallas, but everyone should be eligible to return by the Cleveland game. You're almost out of the woods. You got a lot of your essential guys back, including Lamar Jackson. Things are looking good. Things are turning up, so to speak. And now you have a positive test on game day. As a fan, my immediate reaction was not so much that I felt bad for Dez. I mean, you obviously feel some of that, but I'm freaking out because we just went through this whole mess a couple weeks ago. The last thing I want to see is another widespread outbreak run through this team, or really any team in the NFL for that matter, because it just screws so much up. So I don't know, Jake, what was your initial reaction? Because I want to get into the NFL and their lack of response and just their lack of a forward-thinking plan when it comes to this stuff. But your initial reaction when the news comes out, Dez isn't playing, and by the way, it's because he tested positive for the coronavirus.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I have written down on my notes here, right, even before I dive into anything game-related. You just really feel for the guy. I mean, he, for everything that the people have said about Dez Bryant, his career is clearly over. He hasn't played in 3 years. What is he really going to provide you as far as upgrading what you already have in your passing game at the receiver position? And you couple that along with, he hasn't really done too much to this point, but he's certainly, he's made his return to the NFL. He's had a couple receptions here and there, hasn't caught a touchdown or done anything drastic to that point yet. But now you have a situation where he comes back and is able to make a comeback. And then suddenly, when the Ravens have on the back end, it seems like of their outbreak, and everybody's hoping that the outbreak is over, then this happens. And of all teams to have it come against, it's the Cowboys, Dez's former team. So I can't even imagine like the emotions that were already going through his mind and his body, like in the past couple of days, and waking up yesterday still thinking that he was going to be playing in the game, and then minutes, an hour or maybe more than an hour before the game is supposed to kick off, he's told that he has COVID and can't play in the game. Just crazy. And I can't even imagine what thoughts were running through his mind at that point. And I'm not surprised that he reacted the way he did on social media. Would I have been drinking wine hours after being tested positive for the coronavirus? Probably not. I probably would have chosen, maybe something that you would think like chicken noodle soup or something healthier that you think of when you're getting sick. But when you consider the circumstances, and he probably at that point just wanted to get drunk, I can't really blame him for reacting like that. Certainly hope that this isn't, because now you're thinking if it's a positive case, he's not going to be playing in next week's game, because that's not a 10-day or whatever the time frame is before, or the 2-week period or whatever. But now you're looking at that, and Dez, after making this comeback, now he's on the shelf again, and it's gonna there's gonna be another adjustment to not playing for a little bit once he comes back, and he still hasn't played that much with Lamar. So this is, a lot does go into this. And like you were saying, every single Ravens fan right now should have every finger, every toe, everything crossed, keep knocking on wood that we don't get word later today that there's, 10 more positive cases in the building. And there's still guys like Lamar who say they still can't really taste or smell even coming off of the virus. So he might not be, testing positive at this point, but he still is showing some symptoms that he's not completely over. So
here's my gripe with the NFL. You said earlier that Dez Bryant wakes up on game day excited, expecting to play. That's all well and good, and I wish it was the case for him, but according to the reports that we know, and this, I believe Jay Glazer was the first to say this last night as this was breaking, in the morning, his I guess he took a test yesterday morning. The results came back inconclusive later in the day. So not positive, not negative. We don't know what it is. This is a test coming back from the lab. Inconclusive. Why was Dez Bryant allowed into M&T Bank Stadium on game day when we were not sure if he was positive or negative? These guys get tested every day. When you get a result back that's inconclusive, should give him another test. You obviously don't have time to mail it to the lab, so you got to give him a different kind, like one of the rapid tests. Maybe a little less accurate, but still better than guessing nothing at all. They ended up giving him that after he entered the stadium and went on the field to work out and get ready. And the doctors pulled him and said, hey, let's give you a rapid test. He tested positive. They said, uh-oh, you better leave. You better get out of here. Why didn't they give him that test before he even set foot inside the stadium? This is just such a huge, huge mistake by either the NFL, the Ravens medical team, whoever. This is bad. I mean, this is a terrible, terrible oversight to let a guy who you had no idea what his test results were into the facility. And, oh, by the way, the NFL is reporting there were no close contact concerns, and, they had Dez leave, but they weren't concerned about him being in close proximity to anybody. Meanwhile, though, there's photographic evidence and probably video evidence as well, because the Ravens have an elaborate pregame show on their website of him hugging a staff member of the Cowboys pregame. He's out there, he's shaking hands. I can safely assume that's not the only Cowboys player he embraced like that. That's his former team, a lot of guys that he's familiar with, a lot of guys that probably want to congratulate him on making it back into the league and just being able to play in this game. It shouldn't have been a big deal that they embraced, because the only people allowed in the stadium should be those that tested negative. But they let someone in the stadium that was inconclusive. And then, turns out he was positive. So this is just such a ridiculous mistake by the NFL, the Ravens, whoever is at fault here. I'm sick of hearing, you tune into the average NFL game, and you've got the commentary crew. It's a national game or just a regular weekly game on CBS or Fox. It doesn't matter. Every TV crew, the play-by-play, the analyst guy, they always take a moment during the game to talk about the coronavirus and what players may have been out recently or whatever and the impact it's had on the schedule. It comes up in conversation, and they never fail to always, kiss the ring, so to speak, and start praising the NFL and praising Goodell and the NFL's medical staff and the medical hierarchy. All these people, they're, thank you. They're doing such a great job for making this season happen, going with the flow, rolling with the punches, handling this the best they can, doing really just an incredible job to get this season going. We're all so thankful. No, they suck. They haven't had a plan since day one. Zero plan. They have shown you time and time again this season that they have zero foresight for anything like this that might pop up. The Dez Bryant situation. Look at the Ravens outbreak as a whole a couple weeks ago. Not the best response to that. It's just, I'm sick of hearing them. I'm sick of hearing media praise the NFL and all this stuff for their great work, and they really just have no plan when it comes to this.
It's not that, I don't know all the rules that go into the testing and things like that, but if, I agree 100% that if there's an inconclusive test that you've taken earlier in the day and you haven't gotten a response or any clarity on what the results of that test were, there's just absolutely no reason of why, any Dez should have been allowed in the stadium. And you're 100% right. That's what we've seen, not just talked about locally, but around the entire country as far as sports talk goes. And everybody's been talking about the lack thereof of a plan the NFL has had when all these things have, been going on. And a lot of this, I do give the league some credit for, like I do everybody that's working through this right now, because everything is very fluid and happening in time, and it seems like something new happens every week, or we see something new every day on the news that's just like, oh, here's another curveball. But the lack of foresight, just to be planning ahead, to take quick action and to take preventative action from when there's situations like this. And yes, could there have been some of this too, where Dez was trying to probably maybe Dez himself had maybe a little bit of a suspicion, and he was trying to be as quiet as possible because he definitely wanted to play in this game, probably more than anything he's ever wanted in his life. And maybe he wasn't being very communicative with symptoms that he was possibly feeling, or with this inconclusive test. Maybe he should have, taken it upon himself and reached out and said, hey, I'm going to protect my teammates. I wouldn't expect this out of, somebody like Dez in his position where you're about to play, the third or fourth game you've played in a couple of years against your former team. I'm not going to hold it against him if he was experiencing symptoms to on a personal level, as frustrating as it is, because you look at it from a human element. But should he have, if he was having any symptoms, maybe said something, or if he didn't have the results from his test, maybe wait until further direction was given from the team or by the league. But he didn't do that, and now we just have to hope that he came in with very few people in terms of coming in close contact with players and coaches.
So, real quick to your point about Dez, not, if he, and we don't know this, by the way. This is all just guessing and
it's speculation. It's all speculative,
or a hypothetical, if you will. Let's say hypothetically, right, he did know that he had symptoms, like whatever it was. He maybe not losing his sense of smell or taste, but he was feeling it in his throat. He had a cough. He was feeling a little bit of a fever coming on. If that was what he was experiencing, and that combined with getting an inconclusive test back instead of a negative test, and he proceeded to go to the stadium, I am going to hold that against him. Because again, the Ravens as a team just went through the biggest outbreak in professional sports. You have seen, Dez has seen, firsthand just how decimating this can be to a professional franchise and what the results can be. The schedule gets all out of whack. You're trying to play against the Cowboys. I get that. But, hey, it's Tuesday, by the way, not Thursday, not Monday, not Sunday. It's Tuesday night. You're playing on Tuesday night. If that's a wake-up call right there as to how weird things can get because of this. And not even when you play the game, but, by the time you do suit up, is it going to be Lamar Jackson, the MVP at quarterback, or is it going to be RG3 gimping around and then Trace McSorley comes in? Are you going to have a competent offensive line, or are you going to have a bunch of guys that should probably be in the XFL playing on the O-line? Like, this can be devastating to a franchise. And if he truly had symptoms, and I don't know, the league's probably going to have to do an investigation about this. I mean, they should, just like they investigated the Ravens for their outbreak. You got to say something. You just have to. Like, this is bigger than you. It's about the entire team. And you've seen firsthand what can happen when someone supposedly doesn't report symptoms. Steve Saunders admitted to not reporting symptoms, admitted to not wearing a mask whenever or every time he should have been. And we don't know if it was solely on him for the entire Ravens outbreak, but I think it's a safe conclusion to say that he had some impact on it, or a pretty significant impact on it. So, again, hypothetical, totally a hypothetical. I would like to think, based on Dez's response on social media, that he had no symptoms and this came as a complete shock to him. In that case, I'm not too mad at him. And if he got an inconclusive test, didn't feel any different, and got the go-ahead from the team, the NFL, whoever it was, that said, oh, yeah, you're good, you can show up, then it's not on him at all. But, that is a hypothetical that I wanted to say. Speaking of players coming back from the coronavirus list, the Ravens got a huge boost on their defensive line. Calais, Campbell, Brandon Williams, both back off the COVID list. Campbell tested positive himself. Williams was a close contact, one of the first after J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram tested positive. Williams was the first close contact identified. So he was actually eligible to play in the Steelers game, if I'm not mistaken, but he was still dealing with his injury. So both are back off the COVID list. Both are back from their injuries that had them sidelined for a little bit. And that is just a huge boost for this defensive line, getting those three guys back together, Williams, Campbell, Wolf. You look at the box score of this game, not their best effort in terms of stopping the run. I mean, Ezekiel Elliott had a pretty good game. The Cowboys rushed for over 100 yards altogether. Elliott was 77 on 18 carries. Pollard added 22 on 8 carries. That's not a great average, but Elliott had a good day. So it's not their best effort, but we all know moving forward that having those three guys together and healthy is going to have a huge impact on whether or not the Ravens make the postseason. They really start everything up front there. And for the most part this year, when those three guys have been playing and have been healthy, the Ravens have been very good at stopping the run. This may be the first game where they've all suited up that they haven't been extremely stout against the run. I think back to maybe the Eagles game. You look at the box score of that one, it might have been a little inflated because their running back had like an 80-yard touchdown run. That sort of warps things a little bit. But for the most part, when I watched the game, they certainly passed the eye test. And the one instance where I was just so happy to have them back, and it still ended in a touchdown, but in terms of stopping the run on the goal line, I believe it was the last Cowboys touchdown. They move all the way down the field, get inside the 5. Ravens defensive line, those three guys, and really everyone as a group, stop them on 3 consecutive runs. They end up going for it on 4th down. They pass. Touchdown to Cooper, I believe, hauled that one in. He was wide open in the back of the end zone. But in terms of stopping the run on the goal line, they stuffed them 3 straight times. So eye test, I was pleased. Box score, not great. But I mean, it should be mentioned, you saw Campbell get up off the field at times. He was clearly not 100%. The snap count totals came out today. He actually wasn't out there as much as I thought he was. Calais Campbell was not out there a lot in the second half, had a pretty low snap total in the game. Brandon Williams a little bit different. I think he was closer to 100%, but Campbell maybe not 100%. So I think moving forward, and we'll talk about this later, they got a tough task in terms of stopping the run this coming week against Cleveland. Having those 3 guys, those 3 run stuffers, Williams, Campbell, Wolf, all 100% healthy is going to make a huge difference for this defense and this entire team.
Yeah, 100% agreed. And that was one of my points that I wrote down as well about it was one of the 2. I believe it was Brandon Williams. I rewatched the play on Queen's interception. Great play by Queen to have the awareness and to dive and get the pick there on Dalton's 1 interception in the second quarter. I believe it was Brandon Williams that tipped that pass that went in the air. And then Patrick Queen was able to get his hands on it and catch it. That's kind of why I was concerned about Campbell's injury a few weeks back. Is a guy that's in his mid-30s now and a calf injury. That's one that might linger. And I think Campbell only missed 2 or 3 games. So, you're talking about a calf injury, and I know that there was a little bit of a delay in the game as well, which probably helped his cause to come back and play in this one. But yeah, I did also see, I saw the writers on social media were saying that Campbell's snap count decreased in the second half as the game went along. But yeah, I mean, really, this game was the first time all season that I really picked up on just how dominant this whole defensive line with Wolf and Campbell and Williams can be when they're all in there together. I mean, yeah, they were in there a lot. Not even really a lot, because Derek Wolf, I think, had a COVID or an injury scare. Brandon Williams missed a game or 2 here and there as well. I mean, this was a fill-in a lot of the time with other guys like the rookies, Washington and Matabike and Justin Ellis working in there as well. We've seen some of those guys get some work in there too. And now, I mean, even if Campbell isn't back to 100%, you hope that by the end of the season and potentially in the postseason, he can be back to his full form. But they certainly have depth there. So if Campbell, even next week with their next 2 games, I think, as long as they're still played on time, have 6 days in between. So he doesn't really have a lot of time to nurse that injury. I mean, maybe Campbell's probably going to miss a lot of practice time here over the next few weeks, but as long as he can be close to his full form by the end of the regular season and the other guys are remaining healthy, I think that bodes well for this front 7 and this defense, because they clearly made a difference yesterday with both of them back in the lineup. And we saw that with the tip pass that Patrick Queen was able to intercept and put together. Helping the rookie put together a very nice first season for the linebacker out of LSU.
Yeah, so I mean, let's just go right to the defense and talk about their performance. It's kind of a tough game to make sweeping statements about, because sure, they only gave up 17 points, but you had 3 missed field goals for Greg Zuerlein. The Ravens gave up 388 total yards of offense. That's on the higher end, way more than we're accustomed to with this Ravens defense, especially when you consider you've got some of those key contributors back like Williams and Campbell. On the day, it was I would probably classify it as a bend but don't break defensive effort. They gave up some lengthy drives, didn't shut down drives early, but in the red zone, they always found a way to tighten up. They gave up touchdowns. The Cowboys had their touchdowns, but the one was late in the game. It was garbage time. But throughout the game, for the most part, forced a lot of field goal attempts. 3 missed field goals, like I said. But if you want to be fair, 2 of them were from 50-plus. So those, for guys that aren't Justin Tucker. And, oh, by the way, Justin Tucker missed a field goal from inside 40. This year gets stranger and stranger, I'll tell you that. But
he sucks.
For guys not named Justin Tucker, field goals from 50-plus are truly a coin toss, so to speak. And Zuerlein, he's been in the league for a while. He's a name that I would put up there in terms of kickers, but he did not have a good game at all, obviously. 3 missed total kicks, 2 from 50 plus. Even if you want to give them all three of those field goals back, put them on the board, Cowboys put up, 26 in the game. That's not great for the Ravens. But I will say one last thing for the defense. They were not set up with great situations in the day. You had the Ravens interception early on. Lamar threw an interception off the hand of Hollywood, got intercepted, set the Cowboys up in Ravens territory. And then they had a special teams long kick return by Pollard, set them up in Ravens territory as well. So the Ravens defense not set up in the best situations all day. But at the end of the day, 17 points on the board for the Cowboys. That's all that matters. But I'm not going to sit here and say this is the best defensive effort from the Ravens. And there are quite a few concerns, and the pass rush is one of them. But we'll get into that. I want to hear your thoughts on the defense.
Obviously, yeah, they were really helped by the 3 missed field goals by Zuerlein on special teams. And again, I mean, I know, we joke about having the missed field goal from Justin Tucker, but it just really goes to show what a difference having him on the roster makes. And, even if it's a slight inconvenience for the Ravens in the future to continue to make Justin Tucker among the highest paid kickers in the NFL, then that's a sacrifice they just got to take because he's just that damn good. The defense, you're right. Not the best night, but the fact that they were able to hold the Cowboys to 17 points. I mean, you look at it, it could have easily been 10 more points, or I guess 9 more with the field goal. But some guys that really haven't. Jihad Ward. I mean, he hadn't played in a game since the bye week, I believe, and he came up and had a nice sack in the game. And I mean, I believe that might have been the only sack for the Ravens. Now that I think about it, if I pull up the box score real quick and just look. Yeah, the only sack for the Ravens. I did see Ngakoue in there a lot, like almost get to Dalton several times, but he was definitely getting in Dalton's head. He just didn't actually sack him. And that's happened a lot for Ngakoue this year, is like it just seems like he's always just about there, but can never quite wrap up the sack. And it's just quite ironic because he had 5 sacks with the Vikings before they made the trade, and he's just virtually been a ghost since he got it's just been strange. And I think, not saying that Matt Judon is this perennial Pro Bowler or anything, but not having him out there doesn't help the pass rush either. And it doesn't help Ngakoue out on the other side. But yeah, we're still sitting here in December and the pass rush is still something we're talking about. That's not something that's as consistent as what we would like it to be.
So, I mean, some credit definitely goes to Andy Dalton. He played a pretty solid game overall. I do want to get into the pass rush a little more in depth because it's very concerning for me. And, like I said, Dalton had a pretty decent game. They only had the 1 sack on him, and it came from Jihad Ward, like you said, a guy who has been a healthy scratch at times this year. He hasn't even been active for a lot of games. For some reason, whatever it is, he was a pretty significant part of the defense last year. As a rotational piece, and then this year not so much. But without Matt Judon out there, I guess he got the call up for this game. And give him credit, he got the sack when guys like Ngakoue, Tyus Bowser, Jalen Ferguson, Calais Campbell, nowhere to be found. And I agree with you to some extent about Ngakoue, how he seems to get close but never gets home. This game, it didn't feel that way in this game. I mean, yeah, he had some where he was close. I think I can remember one play where he got his hand in there and tried to swipe the ball out, but didn't time it right. We see him do that. Usually he's good for one of those every game. But I can't remember if it was a Tennessee game or something else where he was really just beating the left tackle on every single play, but never got home for a sack, whatever game that was. There were games in the past where he was truly winning his one-on-one matchup almost every single play and making his opponent look stupid, but he never got home for a sack. This wasn't the case. He wasn't winning his one-on-one matchups as good as he should have been. And we're talking about a Cowboys offensive line that's really pieced together. I mean, they had another starter go down this week who wasn't active for the game. I can't think of his name, but they have sort of a ragtag line going right now that has not done a good job in terms of creating rushing lanes this year for Zeke Elliott, has not done a good job in pass protection for Andy Dalton or whatever scrub they want to throw back there after Dak went down. They have not been good, and they put together a pretty good performance against the Ravens. And I don't know if you're a Ravens fan, I don't know how you can leave this game feeling anything but concerned by that. This is not a good offensive line, and even without Matt Judon and Calais Campbell not at 100%, the effort and the results should have been better because there were a lot of plays where they weren't even close. You know, they didn't even get close to Dalton, and he had all day to throw.
We're into December now, and we continue to talk about it, and things aren't changing. So it's just, now that we've seen a handful of games, a month's worth, well more than a month's worth of game, from Ngakoue, and we're not seeing different results. I'm not losing all hope for Ngakoue. I mean, I think it could be a thing where he might just need like a full off season to get the playbook and adjust to the Ravens scheme. You don't like saying that about a guy that's been in the league for a few years now and a guy that's been as highly regarded as Ngakoue. But and if it's a situation where the Ravens think it's not a good fit scheme wise, then yeah, the answer is to not sign him. But if I'm looking at it between the three players of Ngakoue, Judon, and Bowser, Ngakoue is still my first choice to give a new contract to and bring him back because I think he's the most talented player. The results haven't been there so far since he's come to Baltimore, and that's been very disappointing. But I still think when you look in terms of raw talent and what each player can do and their ceiling. Between the three guys, I think Ngakoue has the highest ceiling. I give Bowser a lot of credit for what he's done this season, but judging on what I've seen up until this point, I don't even know if giving him a second contract when you think about all the other issues the Ravens are going to have to do financially and all the other players are going to have to pay. I just don't think spending any money on Judon or Bowser would really be worth it. I think you could still get some value from Ngakoue, and because those numbers haven't been there since he's come over, I mean, who knows? Maybe that decreases. If selfishly here, if I'm going into the future and the Ravens aren't going to win a championship, and I know that now, okay, I hope Ngakoue does nothing the last 4 games because then that would just drive his price lower and probably increase the Ravens' chances of re-signing him. And I know that Ngakoue is a local guy. He's from Bowie, so who knows? You might be able to tax a couple other dollars off of the full price and have him sign for a cheaper amount than the other 31 teams around the league might be willing to or will be able to get away with. So I don't know, a lot of hypotheticals there, but in my mind, I agree 100%. The pass rush, it's disappointing. It continues to be a big need along with the lack of receivers on this team. We go into the off season and it seems like, pass rush and receiver were two of the areas that were among the top of the list. And, we go into 2021 and those two positions are still there.
So I agree in principle, but I don't, the whole argument about his price fluctuating based on this year, I just don't think that's a thing in the NFL. Like, I think for a guy like Ngakoue who has a track record that he does, if he doesn't produce, through whatever, half of a season with the Ravens, that really has no bearing on his value. Your value is what any given team is willing to pay you, not just the Ravens. So, there's definitely a team out there that's willing to pay him to be one of the top paid pass rushers in the league, for sure. Some team out there will give him that money. It doesn't mean he won't take a little bit of a discount to stay with the Ravens because he wants to be on a winning franchise or whatever, but I don't think his price is being driven down because he's not producing as a Raven. His value is set in stone. The only sort of things that can sort of change your value would be significant season-ending injuries that are not like an easy fix, not like a broken bone that gets fixed. You come back 100%. something that would lead to, lingering effects down the road, or something that would not make you 100%. If the Ravens are going to retain him, they're going to have to shell out a lot of money no matter what. And that's what's going to make it a tough decision, because if he doesn't produce, his price tag is still going to be high. Same thing with Judon. His price, he's produced even less than Ngakoue in their careers respectively. Judon has been far less productive. He's still going to get a similar contract. They're both going to get a similar payday from whatever team they go to.
And I wasn't trying to say that, if he does nothing, that his market value is going to go down the toilet. That I think it could just take some of the total amount of what he would get off, not by a drastic amount or anything, but the Ravens are going to be in a position in a year or two where, every single dollar in the salary cap is going to count. So if they can take any amount of that at all off, I don't necessarily would think would be a bad thing, even if it's just a little bit of what, he would command normally. But yeah, I do agree that no matter what, he's still not going to be a cheap player to retain. But if he, literally has no sacks the rest of the year, I think his total dollar value could go down, a little bit from what he would have gotten maybe this time a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, what the Ravens offer him would certainly go down, but again, it would come down to, what are the Jets or, some other Jacksonville. He's already been with Jacksonville. They wouldn't offer him a deal. What's another team that would make that? The Lions. The Lions would make a move, add him. Maybe the Giants. Just somebody would make a stupid move. Somebody that's not really in contention that thinks they are.
Yeah, I was going to say the Chargers, but they have Bosa, so that wouldn't really make more sense.
Yeah. So some team out there would definitely do it, that would add him and overpay, when the Ravens certainly wouldn't. So if the Ravens think that they can offer him less money, it doesn't mean he has to sign. Some other team would be like, hey, we'll make you the highest paid pass rusher in the league. Come play for us. All right, I'm out. I think at this point he's used to bouncing around from team to team, even if he wants to, see more stability and play for a contender. At the end of the day, the dollar signs are what matter most, 9 times out of 10. So we'll just have to wait and see. Let's talk about something good. This offense, Lamar Jackson and the offense, night and day compared to what you get out of RG3 versus what you get out of Lamar Jackson on any given game. If you were ever needing a reason to appreciate Lamar Jackson more, hopefully last Wednesday watching RG3 try to man this Ravens offense was enough reason for you. Because Lamar, look, it wasn't his best game. It wasn't his flashiest stat padding game, but 12 of 17 for 107 passing yards, that's not crazy. But he did have 2 passing touchdowns, including an incredible throw on the run to hit Hollywood in the back corner of the end zone. He added 94 yards on the ground on 13 carries, just the typical MVP things we saw out of him last year, turning potential sacks into positive gains, turning broken plays into first downs, third down conversions left and right. The Cowboys just could not contain him as a runner like some of these other teams have done in this year. He was truly looked like the MVP in this game, even if the stats weren't off the charts. He's what makes this offense go. You plug someone else into this offense, it's just not the same. When you lose guys like Stanley and Boyle and it really just essential pieces of this offense, it's going to have a big impact. But when you have a quarterback like Lamar Jackson, who time and time again can just turn, like I said, nothing into something, it makes the biggest difference in the world. And when he's playing with this kind of energy, we saw him, he added, I should mention this, 94 rushing yards, had a rushing touchdown as well on the 4th and 2 play. They were in field goal range. Looked like the field goal unit was going to come onto the field. We see the TV camera on Lamar. He waves them off. Says to the coaching staff, says to the special teams unit, no, stay on the sideline. We're going for it. And the coaches, Harbaugh, whoever makes that final say, probably Harbaugh, says, all right, let's go for it. That that is just such a, I can't really put it into words what kind of difference it means to have a quarterback who's capable of doing that, of waving off the special teams unit in a close game, 4th and 2, saying, no, we're going for this. It looked like last year with the energy on the sideline, him hyping up his teammates, them hyping him up, him going down the entire bench, shaking guys' hands after a good drive. Just that energy looked like it was back in this game.
Yeah, it absolutely did. And it wasn't just Lamar. I mean, they had 6 yards shy of 300 total rushing yards for the entire game. Lamar had 94 of them with 7.2 average on 13 carries, and Edwards had 101 yards on 7 carries for an average of just under 15 yards at 14.4. He was outstanding. I mean, he only got the ball 7 times, but he was outstanding in the game. Edwards was. It was his first 100-yard game on the season. I think it's the 5th or 6th time in his career he's done that, gotten up to that amount, and did have the 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's funny. We saw that throw to Hollywood, just an absolutely beautiful throw I think it was the 3rd quarter, maybe could have been the 4th quarter as well. But that second half touchdown, that 20-yarder he had, where Hollywood actually ran a different route and had to adjust and actually run back to the end zone where Lamar threw the ball. You couldn't have placed that better. I mean, that was just a top tier level NFL throw right there. But then you also have instances where, in the 4th quarter, they're trying to get another touchdown to Boykin, and he's throwing on 1 foot, and the ball, it's landing 5 feet in front of Boykin and bouncing up and hitting him in the chest. So yeah, there's still some of that. Like, you have the beautiful throws, you have the ugly throws. I did see a lot, and I feel like it's kind of been a theme this year where I think some of the inaccuracy, Lamar's kind of not regressed is not the word I'm using by any stretch, but he a lot more this season compared to last year. And last year when he did it, he was accurate. So credit where credit's due. But he's throwing a lot of passes with his feet really close together instead of spreading them out more and kind of leading into the throw. So, and I know Lamar has unorthodox mechanics and he has several ways of throwing the ball, but on several of his inaccurate balls last night, I noticed that his feet were he was throwing off 1 foot, like his back foot, or that his legs were just close together. So I kind of attributed some of the inaccuracy to some of the mechanical things there. But yeah, the emphasis was and was always going to be on the run game for this game, considering that the Cowboys have the worst run defense in the NFL. But yeah, this is what the Ravens are. This is what they do best. And when they have a team like the Cowboys, they can do this very well against, despite the fact that they don't have much of an offensive line right now and they don't have much of a tight end unit to run block for them. They were able to put together a performance like they did. I still have my reservations, though, for when they go against a team like the Browns next week or a team in the playoffs and they're either in a close game or they're down. There is something to be said for, this is all great when they're winning, but when they're in a close game or down and they need, quick scores through the air, can this offense do it? And I'm still not convinced that they can. I know they can run the ball, but if you need a quick score right away, is this run game going to do it, or are they going to have to throw the ball? And even when they do need to throw the ball, they don't always do it. So that's still a concern for me going forward.
So as far as like Lamar's mechanics, it's such a weird thing because it's always been like that going back to college. And you look at some of the throws that he would have in college, deep balls that is, and how much zip he could put on the ball, and just how good his deep ball could be at times, just throwing with this weird footwork and this weird foot stance or throwing on the run. He made it look so effortless, and then we would see it at times at the NFL level. This year, the deep ball has not been good at all, has not really hit them with any sort of consistency. It's such a weird thing because it's when it comes to his detractors, that's always the first thing they're going to cite, is he just doesn't have the mechanics to be an NFL quarterback. But at this point in his career, he's not going to change. He's not going to all of a sudden become or have completely different mechanics. You can work on different things here and there. I think his arm angle and how, his elbow placement and, the angle he throws the ball from and that sort of thing, that's something you can do and work on and control a little bit. We saw games earlier this year where he sort of just got into this bad habit of throwing it sidearmed or throwing it at a weird arm angle. I think at this point with Lamar, when it comes to like talking about his mechanics, it's nothing that I think is holding him back from being a great quarterback. It's just who he is. You see the touchdown to Hollywood. He can make throws like that on the run where his feet are just horrendously placed and this play has no business of being completed. He can do that consistently. He is capable of leading the league in touchdown passes, and leading the league from touchdown passes from the pocket, not just escaping the pocket and throwing. Like, he led in touchdown passes from the pocket last year, and then obviously overall touchdown passes. So he's capable of being a great passing quarterback, or a good passing quarterback, to complement his elite running ability in the NFL. And it's just, at this point, when it comes to like his detractors, there's a lot that you can get on him in his game, but I think his mechanics at this point in year 3, it's almost a tired conversation, because it is what it is. Like, he was the MVP with what people would call, I guess, quote unquote, bad mechanics. He was the MVP. He did everything I just said, leading the league in touchdown passes with bad mechanics, unconventional mechanics. Like, I just don't think that should be part of the conversation right now when it comes to him. It should just be a matter of like smoothing out some of the inconsistencies. And he'll tell you that. I mean, you see him throw that ball into the turf where he's trying to hit Boykin, and he immediately, like, he's beating himself up over it. We've seen that with Lamar time and time again. So I think he's capable of it. If I was a fan of another team watching Lamar on not my team, I might feel different. Like, I'm more inclined to defend him, I guess. But I don't know. I think he is what he is in year 3, and we've seen what his ceiling is, and it's tremendously high.
Yeah, I guess if I could phrase that differently, I guess, I agree 100% with, he's in year 3. No matter what he does to try to improve his game, I think at this point you're still going to see some plays that might not look traditional, in the sense of, I guess is the word I was, like to use in terms of what a quarterback would typically do mechanically. And with that being said, Lamar's mechanics are not a big concern for me, I guess. Not to restate, but I guess to say again, like, my top concern, it's not just Lamar, but for Lamar, for Greg Roman, for this offense, for both the players they have and the system, is, in a situation where they need quick scores if they're down, or if they need quick scores, they don't even need quick scores. They're in the first quarter playing Kansas City, and they want quick scores to get up early. Can they be successful in a way that we haven't seen them do yet? And after so many times of seeing the same thing and not getting the results, it's hard to have confidence that they will be able to figure it out. But, that's why they practice. That's why they play the games. So, it's okay for me to doubt them, but it ultimately matters what they do, with the remaining 4 games. And if they make the playoffs, whatever they end up doing in January.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% on that. And the run game, definitely want them to stick with that moving forward. It was an obvious offensive game plan against the Cowboys, like you said, just a terrible run defense. It should have been the game plan coming in. I was happy to see that they got it going early, stuck with it. I think some people were disappointed to see Mark Ingram get some of the first touches, and then have it take a while before J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards get their first touches. But overall, Mark Ingram did end up having a decent enough day. Some of his later runs in the second half, when that Cowboys defense was just wanted to go home. They wanted no part of this game and stopping the Ravens' rushing attack. He picked up some better yardage, but that's my only gripe. Have Dobbins out there to start the game. Dobbins should be the starter. He should be there on the first drive, or Gus Edwards at least. I'm sorry. Ingram should be a guy that if you have a game like this where you're rolling as a rushing unit, Mark Ingram should be the guy that gets, 5 to 7 touches late in the game as a closer.
Well, and they're even factoring, Justice Hill, who was getting no offensive snaps, he played 6 snaps last night, which I know that's not a lot, but after not an impressive, but a positive showing in Pittsburgh, where he had a couple of decent runs, maybe a reception or two, got some opportunities with both, Ingram and Dobbins out. Now they're even factoring him in, even if it is for just 6 snaps. He is getting some of that workload now. No carries last night, but a 4-yard reception.
Yeah, and I think they really like to use him on passing downs is when you see all of his snaps come. I would probably guess that all 6 of those snaps were a 3rd down passing situation when they bring him in.
They probably were, yeah. Yeah, I do remember seeing him in there a lot on 3rd down last night.
So they do that. They still do that a lot, and it could go back to what I was saying a couple podcasts ago, that they just don't have that confidence in Dobbins yet as a pass blocker. But we know Dobbins has a lot of ability to catch passes out of the backfield, so I would think that you would see him a little bit more on 3rd down, but maybe they really do have big concerns about his blocking ability, but I don't know. Before we move on to Cleveland, one of the last big things I wanted to say, the penalties in this game. The Ravens, for the first time in what feels like forever, were on the good side of the turnover differential. They had just 4 for 23 yards. Dallas had 7 for 58 yards. I don't know how many weeks you'd have to go back to find the last time they were on the good side of the differential, but it's been a while. And with that, it took 11 full games, and it took them till their 12th game, but they finally got an opponent or opposing defense called for pass interference. And all it took was an absolute mugging at midfield on Luke Wilson. I don't know the name of the Cowboys defender, but he got his money's worth on that pass interference call because it was one of the easiest flags you'll ever throw as a ref. The ball was overthrown, but how many times have we seen a pass overthrown by an opponent and Marcus Peters get called for a flag where there really isn't a lot of contact, or there's just a slight jersey tug, and they call the pass interference on a ball that's overthrown. When you go 11 whole games without calling a pass interference on a Ravens opponent, I don't care if the ball isn't even in the same zip code. You throw the flag on a mugging like we saw on Luke Wilson there. And to go along with that, it's like the holding, where we saw for the first time in many, many weeks an opposing defense called for holding, an opposing offense called for holding against this Ravens defensive line. They got one of their offensive linemen grabbing Brandon Williams early in the game. That was the first time, and it was the only offensive holding call on the Cowboys in this game, and the first time in weeks that a Ravens opponent has been called for offensive holding. It's ridiculous. We've been saying it. Ravens fans have been complaining about it all year, and it's something that other fan bases just won't get. It's something the national media just won't pay attention to. You won't get it unless you watch every Ravens game, every single snap, just how absurd it has been that it took this long for a pass interference call, and you went that many weeks without an opposing offense getting a holding call. That should be something you see at least once every week. If an opponent doesn't have an offensive holding call, that's a rarity in the NFL. That is a rarity. If you can go an entire game as an NFL team, I don't care how good you are as an offensive line. If you play a full game without getting called for holding, that is extremely rare. The one last thing, they did have their illegal formation, so don't worry. Everything went according to plan there. The Ravens got hit with their weekly illegal formation call, and I don't know what the record is for most illegal formation penalties by a single team in a season. I don't know if that information is readily available or not, but I would have to think that the Ravens are giving that record holder a run for their money.
Probably true, but like a lot of things with the NFL officials, we don't have the answers to why any of this stuff happens, and it seems like it's something every week where Harbaugh says he tries to ask the NFL a question about an officiating thing, and they don't give him an answer. And I'm sure that it's not just the Ravens that it happens to. I'm sure every team has gripes with the officiating, but yeah, definitely certain aspects of the officiating in regards to the Ravens have been a little frustrating this year, but I guess it's just their year to get screwed by the refs.
Yep, you got to play good enough to beat the opponent and the refs. I mean, that's just the NFL standard. You never want to lose because of the refs. Like if it's a blatantly obvious call that they missed in crunch time on the game-winning play, then yes. But for the most part, stuff that happens throughout the game, You got to play with the mentality that you should be able to overcome that stuff. So, it is what it is. So let's move on. Let's close things out here. Got the Cleveland game coming up. Second meeting with the Browns, and boy, things could not be any more different than they were in week 1. The Cleveland Browns are 9-3. They have already secured a guaranteed winning season, and they are on the verge of making the playoffs for the first time since I don't know when. A very long time. So a lot of excitement in Cleveland, and rightfully so, because no matter how ugly some of those wins have been against inferior teams, they're finding a way to win. And there is something to be said about winning ugly or winning close games consistently. And the Cleveland Browns have done that. And now that they're on the verge of being a playoff team and they have some, competency and seemingly good coaching this year with Stefanski, people beat up on Baker a lot, but he's quietly having a pretty decent year. Yardage is probably not there, but his touchdown to interception ratio is the best it's been in his career, which is saying something for him because that's been a concern with him in the past. I think the Ravens, this game is all about the run on both sides of the ball. For the Ravens defense, stopping Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, clearly the most threatening backfield in the entire NFL, but thankfully you have Brandon Williams back, you have Calais Campbell back. Hopefully by the time they play this game, Calais is a little more close to 100%, because we've seen that group, when they're healthy and they're all together and they're on their game, they've shut down some good runners. And in the first meeting, they did a pretty good job stopping Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. And then with that, defensively, I think they're going to have to force a turnover. I just praised Baker Mayfield for having a pretty good year. He has limited the interceptions, but in the past he has thrown quite a few picks against the Ravens, so this Ravens secondary is very familiar with him.
So while you were going through all that there, I did some research, and the last time the Browns played a playoff game was January 5th, 2003, which would have put us, I believe, if I'm correct on this, in second grade at Southern Elementary School. So Nolan, real quick, do you remember the name of your second grade teacher?
No, I don't.
I know mine, and you're going to know why I remember it in a minute, because the name, and I kid you not, is Mrs. Dick.
Oh, that I do remember Mrs. Dick, but I don't think I had her as a teacher.
But yeah, she was my second grade teacher, and I was curious because I don't even remember the other teachers, of that grade, but I do remember her name, because how could I forget that?
Do you think?
But yes.
Do you think Mrs. Dick always wanted to be an elementary teacher, or she tried to be a high school teacher, and they just said, with a name like that, you're probably best off teaching the youngest kids? If
her intent and her wish was to teach high school kids, I give her a lot of props for the ambition, but I think she made the correct career choice by deciding or being forced to teach elementary age kids. I think that was a good career choice for her.
Right. I mean, because I do remember even by the time we got to fifth and sixth grade, the jokes were circulating then.
Maybe for you. I mean, I was an angel, so I didn't know anything about any of that.
Hey, come on, man! It's public school. You got this stuff. You hear the jokes. That's where That's where a young man, a young woman, their sense of humor is formed in the public school system. I stand by that.
That's what led me, living in a trailer and moving to Nashville earlier this year. Is the redneck all started in the Southern Elementary School hallways in Glen Rock, Pennsylvania. But anyway, I digress. Moving on to the actual game here, the important stuff. I'm apologize if I missed this. Did you give out a pick in your preview there?
No, real quick. I think the Ravens pull it out. I think they want it more. They're fighting for their life every week. I know Cleveland is, like I said, still in the division race, but I just think the Ravens want it and need it more. Record-wise, and I think they get it done 28-24.
All right. Well, I don't know if this might be the first time in a couple of weeks where we've had a disagreement, but I'm gonna go with Cleveland here. I think the Ravens will. The Giants game actually is more interesting now that they have a little bit of a thing going now late in the year, but I still think the Ravens will win that one. But I think the Ravens will win every game remaining aside from this one. I just think it comes down to the Browns being a better team. And more times than not, yes, you could say that the Patriots weren't as talented as the Ravens. And, there was some weather factored in there as well. But more times than not, for the better part of the last calendar year, about now, when the Ravens have been faced with a team that's better than them or at their level, they just haven't always been able to answer the call. And, they're still going. The other thing is, and it's unfair to speculate right now, but who knows with the COVID situation and if they're going to be without more of their players. And you were talking about, not letting a player that had an inconclusive test even come into the building. I think there could be another argument for letting a player like Lamar Jackson, who has said, like in a press conference, that he still has symptoms such as like he can't taste or smell. I think there could also be an argument for still not letting Lamar back in the building, but clearly that isn't an issue. And even Hollywood was saying after the game that, as soon as Lamar was cleared, he was hugging everybody in the huddle. So, even if these guys are cleared coming back, there's still instances where they're not, fully distant from each other. But anyway, back to the game. I just think it's a case of, the Browns match up better with the Ravens now at this point, and they're the better team. They've been playing like it. Week one was kind of a, new coaching staff. The Ravens coming off a 14-2 season, pissed off of that playoff loss. A lot of circumstantial stuff, I think, led to what went wrong for the Browns in that game, along with, the Ravens having all their pieces there, but now they don't have all their pieces. The Browns running game, they've owned the Ravens multiple times over the last couple of years. The Ravens haven't swept the Browns, I believe, since 2017. I think Cleveland's picked up one on them each of the last two seasons. So this would be the, if the Ravens did sweep them, it'd be the first time in 3 years. But the Browns always seem to give the Ravens a little bit of trouble. If you factor it in being a Monday night game and a primetime game, I think Cleveland's going to be fired up. They're going to be they're going to be playing tough too, especially after getting blown out and embarrassed opening weekend. But I think the Ravens dropped this one, and they went out after that, their last three, and they need some help to get into the playoffs. And you're right. Cleveland is still in the divisional race. I do think Pittsburgh will come out on top. I do think that Pittsburgh will still take care of Cleveland the final week of the season, especially if, Pittsburgh's still competing with Kansas City for the number one spot. Although if there's no bye, if they do end up adding an eighth team, which they haven't yet, I don't know if that matters much, but I'm going with Cleveland here, 34-24. I just see them getting up ahead of the Ravens early, and both teams do a good job of scoring throughout the game, and the Ravens just can't keep up. Kind of like the Week 4 game went last year. Maybe not as high scoring by Cleveland, but I could see them pulling ahead early and the Ravens just not being able to catch up.
All right, well, we'll see, and we'll be here next week to talk about it, that's for sure. That's it for episode 131. As always, you guys share the podcast, family, friends, coworkers, whatever, anyone you know that is a Ravens fan. Tell them that you like the podcast, that you enjoy our recaps of the game, preview of the game, whatever it is, our sense of humor. It doesn't matter. Tell them whatever you want. Just tell them to listen.
Here's my suggestion too. If you have children and you're driving around, like traveling for the holidays all over the next few weeks, instead of playing Christmas music in the car, turn on Charm City Birdwatch and just watch how the kids and the wife react. I guarantee you it will go over fantastic.
Great. Stocking stuffer. A great free gift to give someone. Just spreading the word. You don't have to spend any money. Say, hey, here's a gift for you. Listen to the podcast. So we've gone long enough here. But 132 next week. Thank you for listening, as always. We'll talk to you then.